Be me, Sarah, 34, HR director. Been working here for 6 years, finally got promoted to director last year. Always known I was destined for leadership, especially in creating safe spaces for marginalized voices. The previous HR director was some old white guy who clearly didn't understand modern workplace dynamics. Spent my first few months quietly observing all the microaggressions and subtle discrimination happening daily. Male employees constantly talking over women in meetings. Guys making harmless jokes that obviously make female colleagues uncomfortable. The classic boys' club mentality where important decisions happen during golf outings and happy hours. Knew I had to do something revolutionary to change this toxic culture. Start researching best practices for creating truly inclusive workplaces. Attend several professional development conferences about workplace equity. Network with other progressive HR leaders who share my vision. Become convinced that traditional HR approaches are fundamentally flawed. They're designed by and for the patriarchal power structure. Realize that women have been silenced for too long in professional environments. Decide it's time to implement real systemic change, not just empty diversity initiatives. Call emergency meeting with CEO Robert and other executives. Present comprehensive proposal for new workplace conduct policies. We need to fundamentally reimagine how we handle workplace complaints. Explain how traditional investigation processes actually re-victimize complainants. When we question women's experiences, we're perpetuating centuries of systemic silencing. Emphasize that requiring evidence creates impossible burden for victims of subtle harassment. Most discrimination happens behind closed doors with no witnesses anyway. Point out that false accusations are statistically negligible compared to unreported incidents. CEO looks skeptical, but I can tell he's worried about potential lawsuits. Mention recent high-profile cases where companies got destroyed in media for mishandling complaints. Do we really want to be on the wrong side of history here, Robert? Explain that our current policies are actually legal liability waiting to happen. Modern juries and judges expect companies to take proactive stance on workplace equity. Finally, get approval to implement new workplace safety and equity protocol. Spend next 2 weeks drafting comprehensive new policy framework. Centerpiece is trauma-informed response system for handling complaints. Establish anonymous digital reporting portal where anyone can submit concerns. Complainants can remain completely anonymous throughout entire process. No requirement to confront accused parties or provide specific evidence. Investigation process focuses on impact over intent. Doesn't matter what someone meant. If behavior made anyone feel unsafe or uncomfortable, that's sufficient for corrective action. Implement immediate temporary suspension protocol for serious allegations pending review. Design beautiful, user-friendly reporting interface. Includes drop-down menus for different types of misconduct. Microaggressions, inappropriate comments, exclusionary behavior, intimidation, harassment. Allows for detailed narrative descriptions of incidents. Includes optional fields for witnesses, but emphasizes these aren't required. Prominently displays message, your voice matters. Your experience is valid. We believe you. System automatically generates case numbers and sends acknowledgement emails. Creates secure digital paper trail while protecting complainant identity. Roll out new policies with mandatory all-hands training session. Prepare detailed presentation explaining philosophy behind changes. For too long, workplace investigation processes have been designed to protect institutions, not people. We're moving beyond outdated adversarial models toward restorative justice approaches. Emphasize that questioning allegations often causes more harm than original incident. When someone trusts us enough to share their experience, our job is to listen and respond, not interrogate. During Q&A, several male employees raise concerns about due process. Marcus from engineering asks about protections against false accusations. Feel my blood pressure rising at his obvious defensive reaction. Marcus, I think it's telling that your first concern is false accusations rather than creating safe environment for your colleagues. Explain that false accusations are largely myth perpetuated to silence victims. The real question is, why are you more worried about hypothetical false accusations than actual documented patterns of workplace harassment? Watch him shrink back in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with being called out publicly. David from sales asks about appeals process for accused employees. David, I want you to really think about what you're asking here. Yeah. You're essentially asking how we can make it easier for people to escape accountability for harmful behavior. Explain that focus on protecting accused parties often re-victimizes complainants. Our priority has to be creating an environment where people feel safe speaking truth about their experiences. Notice several women nodding approvingly while men look increasingly uncomfortable. Exactly the dynamic shift I was hoping to create. First week after implementation, received 3 anonymous reports through new system. Report number 1. Female marketing coordinator reports male colleague consistently interrupts her in meetings. Describes pattern of dismissive behavior and condescending tone during project discussions. Includes specific examples but no witnesses since behavior happens in group settings. Immediately schedule coaching session with accused employee about inclusive communication. Report number 2. Anonymous complaint about inappropriate jokes in break room. Doesn't specify which jokes or who made them, just general discomfort with atmosphere. Send company-wide email reminder about professional communication standards. Report number 3. More serious. Allegation of sexual harassment against Tom from accounting. Anonymous complainant describes uncomfortable personal questions and unwanted attention. Mentions feeling unsafe being alone with him in office. Immediately implement temporary suspension while conducting review. Tom seems genuinely shocked and confused when I inform him. Keeps asking for specific details about allegations. Tom, I understand this is difficult, but I can't compromise the complainant's safety by revealing identifying information. Explain that investigation will be thorough and fair, but must prioritize victim protection. The most important thing right now is ensuring everyone feels safe in workplace. Tom's suspension causes immediate buzz throughout office. Notice male employees huddling in concerned conversations. Several female colleagues privately thank me for taking swift action. Finally, someone who takes these things seriously, says Jennifer from marketing. Feel vindicated that new policies are already making positive impact. Women clearly feel more empowered to speak up, knowing they'll be believed and protected. Conduct careful review of Tom's case over next week. Interview several female colleagues about their interactions with him while most say he's always been professional, but emphasize that harassment often happens privately. Review his email communications and find nothing inappropriate. Check his badge access records for any unusual patterns. Complainant specifically mentioned feeling unsafe being alone with him. Realize that absence of evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence. Harassment victims often have valid reasons for not wanting to provide detailed proof. Ultimately, decide to transfer Tom to different department with formal coaching. Explain to CEO that while investigation was inconclusive, complainant's safety must be priority. We can't risk creating an environment where victims feel unsupported or retaliated against. Tom accepts transfer reluctantly but threatens legal action if this affects his career advancement. Tom, I think it would be wise to focus on improving your interpersonal skills rather than making threats. Document his hostile reaction as additional concerning behavior pattern. Anonymous reports start increasing significantly in following weeks. Report number 4. Male manager accused of creating hostile environment for female subordinate. Describes pattern of excessive scrutiny and unrealistic performance expectations. Complainant feels targeted because of gender. Report number 5. Inappropriate comments about women's appearance in elevator. Multiple anonymous reports reference same incident, but no specific individuals named. Report number 6. Exclusionary behavior during team lunches where boys' club makes business decisions. Clearly, these policies are working. Women finally feel safe speaking their truth. Implement swift corrective actions for each case. Send mandatory training requirements to accused individuals. Issue company-wide reminders about inclusive behavior expectations. Create safe space discussion groups for women to share experiences. Notice significant improvement in office atmosphere as women become more vocal and confident. Several female employees privately express gratitude for creating supportive environment. I never thought I'd see the day where women's voices actually matter here, says Rebecca from HR. Around week 6, receive concerning report about Marcus from engineering. Anonymous complainant describes pattern of intimidating behavior during technical discussions. Alleges he deliberately makes female colleagues feel stupid by using overly complex explanations. Mentions feeling humiliated and excluded from important project decisions. Immediately schedule coaching session with Marcus about inclusive communication techniques. Marcus seems defensive and asks for specific examples of problematic behavior. Marcus, the specific details matter less than the impact you're having on your colleagues. The fact that someone feels intimidated by your communication style is the real issue we need to address. Marcus pushes back, saying his explanations are necessary for technical accuracy. That's exactly the kind of defensive attitude that creates hostile environment for women in tech. Explain that intent doesn't matter when impact is harmful to colleagues. Your colleagues shouldn't have to choose between feeling included and getting technical information. Require him to attend sensitivity training and implement communication improvement plan. Document his resistance as concerning pattern that needs ongoing monitoring. Notice he seems increasingly frustrated and withdrawn after our conversation. Reports continue escalating in both frequency and severity. Report number 7. Anonymous allegation that David from sales made inappropriate advance at office happy hour. Describes uncomfortable personal questions and unwanted physical contact. Complainant felt pressured to be polite because of professional relationship. Immediately suspend David pending thorough investigation. David completely denies allegations and demands to face his accuser. David, that's exactly the kind of intimidation tactic that prevents victims from coming forward. Explain that anonymous reporting exists specifically to protect people from retaliation. Your aggressive reaction honestly validates concerns about your behavior patterns. Investigate David's case by interviewing other women who attended happy hour. Most say they didn't witness specific incident, but acknowledge David can be overly friendly. Several mention feeling uncomfortable with his personal questions and compliments. He always seems to focus more attention on the younger women, notes Amanda from accounting. Review company credit card records showing David bought multiple drinks for female colleagues. While not explicitly inappropriate, pattern suggests concerning boundary issues. Complainant specifically mentioned feeling pressured due to power dynamics. Decide to terminate David's employment based on pattern of boundary violations. CEO initially pushes back, saying allegations seem circumstantial. Robert, this is exactly the kind of institutional thinking that perpetuates workplace harassment. Explain that waiting for more serious incident would be failing our female employees. We have responsibility to protect people, not wait until someone gets seriously harmed. Emphasize legal risks of appearing to ignore harassment complaints. CEO reluctantly agrees to termination with appropriate documentation. David's firing sends shockwaves through entire office. Several male employees seem genuinely afraid and start avoiding female colleagues. Notice guys canceling informal coffee meetings and declining social invitations. Some women complain that male colleagues seem distant and uncomfortable. They're probably just adjusting to new accountability standards, I reassure concerned employees. It's natural for people to feel nervous when toxic behaviors are finally being addressed. Emphasize that temporary discomfort is necessary for creating truly inclusive environment. Receive anonymous report number 8 targeting Marcus again. This time alleges he made disparaging comments about company's diversity initiatives. Complainant describes feeling attacked as woman in tech. Mentions Marcus questioning value of sensitivity training and anonymous reporting system. Immediately call Marcus for follow-up coaching session. Marcus, I'm deeply concerned about reports of your resistance to our equity initiatives. He seems genuinely confused and frustrated. Sarah, I honestly don't understand what I'm doing wrong anymore. Marcus, that attitude right there is part of the problem. Explain that claiming confusion is a common tactic for avoiding accountability. When multiple colleagues feel uncomfortable with your behavior, the issue isn't their sensitivity. The issue is your unwillingness to examine how your actions affect others. Implement formal performance improvement plan with specific behavioral expectations. Require weekly check-ins and additional training modules. Document his continued defensiveness as escalating concern. Mention that further incidents could result in termination. Around week 10, office atmosphere becomes noticeably tense. Productivity metrics show concerning downward trend. Several major projects experiencing delays due to communication breakdowns. Male employees seem reluctant to provide direct feedback to female colleagues, women complaining that men are being patronizing and overly cautious. They're treating us like we're fragile or something, says Lisa from development. Several clients mention noticing dysfunction during project meetings. CEO schedules private meeting to discuss workplace climate concerns. Sarah, I'm getting feedback that our new policies might be creating unintended consequences. Feel defensive about his criticism of carefully implemented equity measures. Robert, change is always uncomfortable for people benefiting from previous system. Explain that resistance is normal when challenging entrenched power structures. The fact that some people feel uncomfortable probably means we're making real progress. Emphasize that temporary disruption is necessary for long-term cultural transformation. But Sarah, our client satisfaction scores are dropping and several key employees have expressed concerns. Are you more concerned about client satisfaction or employee safety, Robert? Point out that prioritizing business metrics over human welfare is exactly wrong approach. If we compromise on principles just because change is difficult, we're failing our moral obligations. Convince him to give policies more time to stabilize. Meaningful change takes time, and we can't let resistance derail progress. Receive report number 9 about James from IT department. Anonymous complaint describes patronizing behavior and technical mansplaining. Alleges he consistently assumes female colleagues need extra help with basic tasks. Describes feeling infantilized and excluded from complex technical discussions. Immediately schedule coaching session with James about respectful workplace communication. James seems genuinely surprised by allegations. I was just trying to be helpful. I offer assistance to everyone. James, the impact matters more than your intentions. Explain how offering unsolicited help can reinforce gender stereotypes. When you assume women need more assistance, you're perpetuating harmful biases. Require him to attend unconscious bias training and modify communication approach. James accepts requirements reluctantly, but asks for guidance about appropriate behavior. I honestly don't know how to interact with female colleagues anymore. James, if you're genuinely confused about treating women as equal professionals, that's concerning. Document his admission of confusion as evidence of deeper bias issues requiring ongoing attention. Anonymous reports reach dozen by week 12. Report number 10. Allegation that Robert himself made inappropriate comment during executive meeting. Describes dismissive attitude toward diversity initiative and questioning women's leadership capabilities. Complainant feels unsafe challenging CEO directly due to obvious power imbalance. Immediately recognize serious implications of allegations against company leadership. Schedule confidential meeting with board member Patricia about handling CEO complaint. Explain sensitivity of situation and need for external investigation. Patricia seems skeptical about anonymous allegations against Robert. Sarah, these are very serious accusations without any corroborating evidence. Patricia, that's exactly the kind of institutional thinking that protects powerful men. Explain how requiring evidence creates impossible burden for employees reporting leadership misconduct. The power dynamics make it almost impossible for someone to come forward with proof. Emphasize legal risks if board appears to ignore harassment allegations against CEO. Convince Patricia to authorize independent investigation while maintaining strict confidentiality. Conduct careful preliminary review of Robert's case. Interview several female executives about their experiences in leadership meetings. Most describe generally professional interactions, but acknowledge subtle dismissive patterns. He sometimes seems impatient when women present ideas, notes CFO Michelle, but I wouldn't call it harassment, more like unconscious bias. Review meeting recordings and email communications for concerning patterns. Find several instances where Robert interrupted female speakers or questioned their expertise. External investigator interviews complainant anonymously and other potential witnesses. Investigation reveals pattern of microaggressions and dismissive behavior toward women. While not explicitly sexual harassment, creates hostile environment for female leadership. Investigator recommends comprehensive coaching and accountability measures for Robert. Present findings to board with recommendation for immediate corrective action. We can't have double standards just because allegations involve company leadership. Board ultimately requires Robert to attend executive coaching and sensitivity training. implement oversight committee to monitor his interactions with female employees. Robert seems resentful about requirements, but complies to avoid more serious consequences. Sarah, I hope you understand the position this puts me in. Robert, I hope you understand the position your behavior put female employees in. Document his resistance and emphasize need for ongoing monitoring. Feel vindicated that even company leadership isn't above accountability. By week 14, Anonymous Reporting System generates daily complaints. Reports number 11 through 15 include various allegations of microaggressions and exclusionary behavior. Male employees accused of interrupting, mansplaining, making assumptions about capabilities. Several reports reference same incidents from multiple anonymous perspectives. Implement group coaching sessions and mandatory bias training for entire male staff. Create safe space discussion groups for women to process workplace experiences. Notice significant improvement in female employee satisfaction scores. However, overall office productivity continues declining. Several major clients express concerns about project management and communication issues. Male employees seem paralyzed about normal workplace interactions. Women complaining that men won't engage in necessary critical feedback. They act like we're going to file harassment complaints if they disagree with us, says Marketing Director Kim. Tensions reaching breaking point as both sides feel frustrated and misunderstood. Receive concerning email from legal department about potential liability issues. Company attorney warns that current investigation practices might violate due process requirements. Mentions recent case where employer faced lawsuit for failing to properly investigate allegations. Sarah, anonymous accusations without corroboration create significant legal risks. Feel frustrated by legal department's obvious bias toward protecting accused parties. Our priority has to be victim protection, not legal technicalities. Emphasize that progressive companies are moving beyond traditional adversarial approaches. Schedule meeting with attorney to address concerns about investigation procedures. We can't let legal fears prevent us from creating safe environment for employees. Explain that trauma-informed approaches prioritize healing over punishment. Attorney warns that several terminated employees have threatened wrongful dismissal lawsuits. They're claiming due process violations and seeking substantial damages. That's exactly what people do when they're held accountable for inappropriate behavior. Convince attorney that standing firm on principles is better than appearing weak. Around week 16, receive anonymous report that changes everything. Report number 16 alleges serious misconduct by female employee, specifically targeting me. Anonymous complainant describes pattern of hostile behavior and abuse of power. Alleges I create intimidating environment and retaliate against anyone who questions policies. Describes feeling unsafe, challenging my decisions due to my position of authority. Mentions specific incidents where I allegedly humiliated employees publicly. Immediately recognize this as obvious attempt to undermine legitimate equity initiatives. First instinct is to dismiss report as bad faith effort to discredit progressive policies. Clearly, someone trying to use system against itself to protect traditional power structures. Review complainant's allegations about my behavior during policy implementation. Describes my responses to Marcus and David as publicly humiliating and professionally threatening. Alleges I created hostile environment for male employees through intimidation tactics. Mentions fear of retaliation for questioning investigation procedures, obviously written by someone with agenda against accountability measures. Consult with board member Patricia about handling allegations against HR leadership. Sarah, we need to treat this complaint with same seriousness as others. Feel shocked by Patricia's suggestion that I should be subject to investigation. Patricia, this is clearly retaliation for creating meaningful change. Explain how false allegations are common tactic for undermining women in leadership. We can't let bad faith complaints derail legitimate progress toward equity. Patricia insists on following same procedures used for other complaints. External investigator interviews anonymous complainant and potential witnesses. Several employees provide testimony about my management style and policy implementation. Marcus describes feeling targeted and humiliated during coaching sessions. David claims his termination was rushed and unfair without proper investigation. Tom alleges his transfer was punishment for being male, rather than legitimate concern. James mentions feeling confused and afraid about normal workplace interactions, clearly coordinated effort by disgruntled employees to reverse positive changes. Investigator also interviews female employees about their experiences. Most praise new policies and describe feeling more empowered to speak up. Jennifer from Marketing credits safe reporting system with improving workplace culture. Rebecca from HR emphasizes importance of believing women's experiences. Amanda from Accounting appreciates swift action against problematic behavior. Obviously, these positive voices validate effectiveness of implemented changes. However, investigation reveals concerning patterns in my behavior and decision-making. Investigator notes tendency to dismiss concerns about investigation procedures. Documents instances where I publicly questioned employees' motives for raising due process issues. Identifies pattern of attributing resistance to bias rather than legitimate concerns. Recommends comprehensive review of investigation protocols and management training. Suggests implementing additional oversight for harassment investigations. Feel betrayed by investigators' recommendations and board's apparent agreement. We're essentially validating bad faith attacks on legitimate equity initiatives. Explain how subjecting progressive policies to traditional scrutiny undermines their effectiveness. If we second-guess every decision about holding people accountable, we're back to protecting predators. Emphasize that resistance always increases when meaningful change threatens established power. Board remains committed to implementing investigators' recommendations despite my objections. Week 18 brings cascade of additional anonymous reports targeting my leadership. Report number 17 describes feeling intimidated during company-wide training session. Alleges I used position of authority to silence legitimate questions about policies. Report number 18 mentions fear of career retaliation for expressing concerns about investigation procedures. Report number 19 describes hostile work environment created by my aggressive management style. Clearly organized campaign by employees resistant to accountability measures. Each new report follows similar pattern of questioning my authority and decision-making. Complainants describe feeling unsafe challenging my interpretation of company policies. Mention fear of being labeled as biased or resistant to progress. Several reports reference specific incidents where I allegedly dismissed legitimate concerns. Anonymous nature makes it impossible to address directly or provide context. Exactly same tactics used against previous targets now being weaponized against me. Begin experiencing same frustration that accused employees expressed during investigations. Want to know specific details about allegations and identity of complainants. Need opportunity to explain context and reasoning behind my decisions. Realize how difficult it is to defend against anonymous accusations without corroboration. Feel trapped by same system I designed to protect victims of workplace harassment. Finally, understand why due process protections exist in investigation procedures. Meet with board to discuss escalating situation and request modification of policies. We need to implement some basic protections against false allegations. Suggest requiring corroborating evidence before taking serious disciplinary action. Recommend allowing accused parties to respond to specific allegations. Patricia reminds me of my previous statements about believing all complaints. Sarah, you repeatedly emphasized that questioning allegations revictimizes complainants, trapped by my own rhetoric about prioritizing impact over intent. But these allegations against me are clearly coordinated and retaliatory. Sarah, isn't that exactly what other accused employees claimed about their situations? Realize Patricia is applying same standards I insisted on for previous cases. Feel panicked about how easily anonymous reporting system can be manipulated. We need to distinguish between legitimate complaints and bad faith attacks. Sarah, how exactly would we make that distinction without investigating complainant credibility? External consultant hired to review entire HR policy framework. Consultant interviews employees throughout organization about workplace climate. Discovers widespread fear and confusion about appropriate professional behavior. Documents significant productivity decline and communication breakdown. Identifies anonymous reporting system as source of anxiety and paranoia. recommends comprehensive overhaul of investigation procedures with due process protections, suggests my removal from oversight role pending completion of misconduct investigation, feel devastated by consultants' recommendations and board's apparent agreement. We're abandoning every principle of victim protection and trauma-informed response. Explain how reverting to traditional investigation models will silence legitimate complaints. If we require evidence and confrontation, women will stop reporting harassment. Emphasize that temporary workplace disruption is necessary cost of meaningful change. Board votes to implement consultants' recommendations, despite my strong objections. Placed on administrative leave while external investigation continues. Feel completely betrayed by organization I dedicated years to transforming. Watch helplessly as new interim HR director dismantles progressive policies. Anonymous reporting system replaced with traditional complaint procedures requiring evidence. All previous disciplinary actions under review with possibility of reinstatement. Exactly the institutional backsliding I worked so hard to prevent. During forced leave, reflect on how situations spiraled so completely out of control. Realize that anonymous reporting system created perfect environment for manipulation. Acknowledge that refusing to investigate allegations properly left organization vulnerable. Understand how emphasis on believing all claims without verification enabled abuse. Recognize that dismissing due process concerns as bias actually undermined legitimate goals. Finally, comprehend why traditional investigation protections exist. Receive final investigation report concluding that my management approach created hostile environment. Findings document pattern of intimidating behavior and abuse of administrative authority. Identifies multiple instances where I retaliated against employees raising legitimate concerns. Recommends termination based on failure to maintain professional standards. Board accepts recommendation and terminates my employment effective immediately. Career in human resources effectively over due to my own policy implementations. 6 months later, learned that most disciplinary actions taken during my tenure were reversed. Tom reinstated to original position with back pay and formal apology. David's termination overturned after legal settlement for wrongful dismissal. Marcus promoted to senior technical position with commendation for patience during ordeal. James leads new initiative for respectful workplace communication training. Even Robert's coaching requirements were reduced after board review. New HR policies emphasize both victim protection and due process rights. Investigation procedures require corroborating evidence before disciplinary action, anonymous reporting available but supplemented with traditional complaint mechanisms. All parties have right to respond to allegations and provide alternative perspectives. Emphasis on restorative justice rather than purely punitive approaches. Workplace climate surveys show significant improvement in trust and communication. Realize my fatal mistake was confusing progressive values with abandoning basic fairness. Believing all women doesn't mean abandoning critical thinking and investigation. Protecting victims doesn't require destroying due process protections. Fighting systemic bias doesn't justify creating new forms of institutional unfairness. Good intentions without proper safeguards create systems ripe for manipulation. Learned too late that justice requires both compassion and careful procedure. Ultimately, my attempt to create perfect victim protection system became tool for victimizing others. Anonymous reporting without verification enabled false accusations and retaliation. Refusing to investigate claims properly protected bad actors while harming innocent people. Emphasis on belief over evidence created an environment of fear and suspicion. Dismissing legitimate concerns as bias prevented necessary course corrections. My own inflexibility and ideological thinking destroyed credibility of important reforms. Final irony is that being subjected to my own policies taught me why they were flawed. Experiencing anonymous accusations without ability to respond showed need for due process. Feeling helpless against coordinated false allegations revealed systems' vulnerability to abuse. Watching organizations struggle with paralyzed communication demonstrated unintended consequences. Realizing how easily good intentions can be weaponized against innocent people. Understanding that true justice requires balancing protection with fairness. Current job search proving difficult as news of termination spread through professional networks. Other HR directors aware of policy failures and workplace dysfunction at previous company. Forced to confront reality that good intentions alone don't qualify someone for leadership. Learning that ideological purity often conflicts with practical effectiveness. Discovering that sustainable change requires building consensus rather than imposing solutions. Accepting that my approach undermined legitimate goals of workplace equity and safety. In retrospect, should have listened to legitimate concerns about investigation procedures, could have implemented victim protection while maintaining basic due process rights, might have achieved lasting positive change through inclusive policy development, failed to recognize difference between questioning methods and opposing goals, allowed personal beliefs to override professional judgment about fair procedures, ultimately harmed both accusers and accused through poorly designed system. Legacy serves as cautionary tale about implementing progressive policies without proper safeguards. Demonstrates how abandoning due process protections can undermine legitimate reform efforts. Shows importance of distinguishing between supporting victims and abandoning critical thinking. Illustrates how ideological inflexibility can destroy credibility of important initiatives. Proves that good intentions require effective execution to create positive change. Learned that true equity requires fairness for everyone, not just preferred groups.